The shofar on tape?
Sure.
You on?
It's on.
Oh! Didn't wait for it to go.
So yes, it can be edited.
Nope. No time for that.
Ta-da.
Okay?
Well,
Yes.
you're right.
We're just
So we had a challenge today. There's a verse here, and whoever could figure it out got a free shoulder massage. So, and we have a winner, and it is Shar. Right, so congratulations. So here we have the where it's found. Tehillim 110 and 8. So chapter 118, verse 24.
I figured that part out.
Yay! Very good. Psalms 118, verse 24. So we have Zeh Hayom. Zeh. He's been talking about that. Zeh is this. Hayom. The day. Asa. Made. Yod He Vav He. This is the day Yahweh has made. Negilah v'nishmecha. Okay, so what's Negilah?
You ever heard the song
Rejoice.
Hava Nagila? That's Nagila, that's the word for rejoicing.
Negilah. Okay, so
what is
we will
Hava?
rejoice. What?
As in Hava Nagila?
Yeah, what is that whole?
You know what Hava means? I'm not sure how it's spelled, I can guess phonetically, but I'm just saying, do you know? As in, I mean,
Well, is it the to be verb? Like
possibly, I mean, Eve's
we will
name was
rejoice.
actually Hua, which some people call Hava.
Hava.
So I'm not sure if that's, it means the mother of all life. So I'm not sure, though, I can't tell you
I
that
think it's
Hava
let's
Nagila.
be in rejoicing mode. Yeah. Okay. Vanishmecha. So we say Hag Sameach. Sameach is the root here. So Nishmecha, the noon is we will, and be glad, be happy. Okay, so.
And then the word bo at the end.
Oh, bo. In it, or in him, but it's it. There's no it in Hebrew, so it's either he or she, but it's, when we put it in English, it's it, in it. Okay, so this is the day made Yahweh. We will rejoice and be glad in it.
Yay,
Did anybody else get it besides Shari?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We got we got that it was Psalms. We got which one it was, and then we cheated and went and looked it up. Oh, okay. We will rejoice.
Well, yeah, I got to 118:24. I was like, how many books of the Bible have that many chapters? It must be Psalms. It's a
So-
puzzle, just, context clues.
So that's actually something that what you're doing there is this act of sleuthing, the detective work. You're inferring, which is to say, doing deductive reasoning as well as inductive. That's one other thing we'll get into. But what I'm saying is that there's different ways to think. So once you figure out that this is a number and not a word, but you could turn this into the word, a word, because as we were saying before, if you put yods and vavs as variables, then this word here, root, is kufhet, which is literally the word that means take hold. And kaf dalet, this is the word 20 and that's 4. I'm not sure what the word for kaf dalet, I have to look in the dictionary. But I could say that kaf as a suffix means like. Dalet isn't the word that stands alone, but dalet is a door. So the word din is to like make a decision.
It's not natural.
You could say, well, there's something like a decision, something like a door. So you could say that Tahalim, we've translated as psalm. Hal is to shine or bright. It's the root of hallelujah. So the tav as a prefix letter, you could probably look up tav he lamed, but he lamed is like praising, right? Shining, radiating. Radiating, take hold, like a door. In other words, choose life. So I could choose to interpret the phrase Tehillim 118:24, right? That's 100, that's 10, and that's 8, as encrypting the message, choose life and radiate. Now I'm reading it backwards. So then somebody could say, well, which is it? Is it a number or is it the sentence?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
So you understand, that's great,
And
that's
we can
good.
read it backwards and forwards and stick letters in the middle.
Exactly! You've got it, you understand. Con gusto.
But isn't that though the she's been going to school for 4 years in the Greek mindset, whereas this is more of that Hebraic mindset where you can put something in and it's still.
Exactly, so just like what you could say, okay, listen, these are a bunch of bozos doing this. The professional translators would never do such a thing, but look at this, the day, make, or made, or produced Yahweh. But they don't even do that. They say, this is the day the Lord has made.
Yeah.
There is no the, that would be the letter hey.
Yeah.
This is present tense, it's not past. And they've flipped the two words backwards. So you tell me, why do all the professional translators muck around with the verb order and add letters and take away letters that aren't even there in the literal grammar? It's proof that it's absolutely fair game to do that. The objective is to say, what did he say and what did he mean?
You know how Anuya has a sense of humor? I hate word puzzles.
Mathematical word
I
problem.
love it.
The mathematical word problems are fine, but like, give me not Sudoku, crossword puzzle, and I'm out.
Well,
And that's this whole language is a crossword puzzle.
What was it that you prayed for that brought this upon you?
I don't know, but every time I start to pray for peace, I get to the P and I'm like, wait, no, I don't want that.
Patience, yeah, we don't pray for patience either.
Yeah, keywords. That's what I meant. It's not peace.
My mom taught us that early. Don't ever pray for patience because you'll get more trials.
It was probably
That's how you
peace
learn.
that I prayed for, and he was like, well, you're gonna have to learn to be peaceful in some weird situations. So here we go.
okay, so literally that's exactly what today's talk was going to be about. What you just described.
Okay.
To pray for peace, and you could say, well, literally the word peace is Shin Lamed Vav Mem. Okay, so if someone were to pray for peace, what are you thinking of in terms of, are you asking for a noun? Or are you asking for a feeling? Are you asking for circumstances? So not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot and say, if you were just going to say theoretically, rhetorically, pray for peace, what do you mean? What's the objective there? What's the goal destination that you're pursuing that you've now got on target? That you're requesting an intervention of divine effect?
I am praying for the feeling, but it ends up being for the circumstance, because if I'm just praying for the feeling of peace, then that's in whatever circumstance.
Exactly.
But if
So
I'm praying for peace, and I guess the way my brain means it is for peaceful circumstance.
okay, so you're asking. You just mentioned two things there. You're asking for a feeling or a change of mind or a change of circumstance, right?
Yes.
So actually, to get the answer, this is the Greek letter delta, which is just a mathematical symbol in the equation, which means change of state. Okay? It's kind of the same as the Hebrew dalet, but I always draw the Hebrew dalet like this, just for what it's worth. If you put them upside down, that's the hourglass, or changing from this world into that world, like separating waters above from waters below. So that's just some of the,
Super cool.
that's just telling you what I'm doing.
We're gonna get this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the point is, does anybody else have something to say, or did she pretty well cover the base? When you pray for peace, you're asking for either a change of feeling, which this is absolutely totally subjective, which means it only exists in your perception, your own mind, your own nephesh, your own neshama, your own inner self. That feeling has nothing to do with circumstances. It's the way you respond, or deal with, or the repercussions are within you. Change of mind is not the same as change of feeling, because the mind is the processing, the analytical, the categorization. So, for example, if all of a sudden a truck pulled up with a whole bunch of cargo in the back of the truck and were to dump it in front of your house, and it's like, deal with it, do something. In fact, I have some friends, they had a couple relatives die, and all that stuff that all those people had hoarded their whole life because of the great value in their mind was just dropped in their lap, and they had just spent a few years organizing where they live, and now they're just cluttered from floor to ceiling, and now they have to go through the process of catalog, organization, determination. Do I keep this? Do I toss this? And if I do keep this, where does it go? Not only which room, but deciding which room, high, low, shelf, box, packet. All that is the functioning of the mind, such that if something happens to you, a dump of events, whether it's an illness, whether it's a thought, oh wow, like somebody says, hey, watch this video, and you go, paleo what? Dow! What do you do with that? How do you organize, catalog, and place? Or tell the truck to just get out of here, dump it next door or down the street. I don't even want to deal with it. But some circumstances might be so overwhelming you have to deal with it. But then you could say, maybe the solution's in the bottom of the bottle. For a while, delay, but then the bottom of the bottle wears off and you can need another bottle or some other sort of pharmaceuticals. You can get a prescription, or you can just turn on the TV, go to La La Land. Those are all methodologies of changing. You're not changing. What you're doing is, those are delays. Just offsetting the need. And all these, where's the rule book in life that tells you what those are or which ones are fair to do? There isn't one. The human condition is to say, hey, figure it out. And you could, besides delay, you could say, look, I'm going to, you might say overcrowd, which is a delay mechanism, which is to say, I'm going to go beat somebody up. I'm going to start a war so I don't have to deal with my own national debt. And we can just distract. So you might say overcrowd is a distraction mechanism. And all these things you'll find people really, really, really doing in life. And psychotherapists, psychologists, various different medical practices deal with all this stuff. So is any of that peace? I would say subjectively, experientially, yeah, they're all aspects of peace. But is any of those the peace that you're actually looking for if you're praying for peace? No? Okay, how would you describe, or can you articulate, what the nature, the substance of the peace is if all these things, as I said them, so you brought them into your ears and you now kind of weigh and measure, that's the ayin. That's not it. I was looking for something, but it's like going to the grocery store and, gee, I'm hungry. Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Can you now, having eliminated all those possibilities, can you define what the peace is that you're looking for?
No. I think it's parts of all of that, but
They hint, but they don't hit the target.
yeah, they don't hit the target. I think the closest is maybe change of mind, being able to have the feeling regardless of circumstance.
Okay, so I've heard that's the definition of happiness. Happiness is not necessarily a change of circumstance. It's that you've personally determined to find a place of either gil or sameach, which is to say, I choose to be happy. Circumstances haven't changed. There's still a pile of stuff that's dumped in my front yard, and the pain, the accident, the trauma, the misunderstanding is still real. We mentioned earlier in the week the Seinfeld show. There was one I think there's one of the classic TV moments. It was about Serenity Now. Does anybody, you don't know about that? You're familiar with the Seinfeld show? It's obsolete now. It's, a few years back. But there was a few characters, and each week they did what they called it the show about nothing. What does that mean? Well, they developed that theme later on in the seasons, but what it was a show of just looking at stuff like this, just human life, and using a little core group of 4 people, and then some secondary to the core. And one guy was pretty smart. He was the comedian, Jerry Seinfeld. One guy was just kind of erratic, the Kramer, the tall guy. Another guy was struggling with his own, you might say, mental thing, a little bit of a goofball. Then there was the one woman, Elaine. Okay, so in this particular show, and they in any show, they don't necessarily string them from one to the next. They just look at stuff that happens in life, just like a little vignette of life. Just open the window and take a peek what's going on. So they live in New York, and they start off saying like George. His dad was going to run a business. They were selling computers and hiring George because George was having a hard time ever finding a job. And he hired another guy, and George wasn't making any sales, and the other guy was, in the garage making phone calls, selling computers. And George wanted to impress his dad, and instead of being the ne'er-do-well son, so he says, "Hey, you know what I can do is pretend to be making sales, but then I got to do something with the computers. So I'll just take the computers, worth thousands of bucks, and take them over to Kramer's apartment and stick them in there." So this one track is running through the whole half-hour show. Kramer, on the other hand, meets some guy who's into some little philosophy thing that says, "Hey, when stress happens, the way to just dissipate it right out of the gate is just say, serenity now. Serenity now." Earlier in the week, we were talking about 2 books that I had found recently that I read. One was called Matrix Energetics, and the other one is Healing Codes. Alexander Lloyd, the Christian, did Healing Codes, and Richard Bartlett, a chiropractor shaman, did Matrix Energetics. These 2 books are preeminent in present consciousness of quantum physics. They both spend the beginning of the books talking about quantum physics, the way things are built. One of them said that consciousness is the missing X factor in mathematical equations of physics, and one of the reasons for this logo is that we're going to be talking about that this week, which I've talked about it all through, which I'll bring in this particular subject today. But the point is, to speak and say something affects physical reality. At the quantum physics level of electromagnetism, where you've got electrons and protons and photons, the minuscule things which manifest as reality. All this is the field of quantum physics. So, relating that back to the Seinfeld, when you say the words, serenity now, you're projecting this peace by overriding. That's another thing, kind of overcrowd or distract, but this is actually overriding and supposedly then altering the existing circumstances. So both the books, Matrix Energetics and Healing Codes, are saying that by thinking, envisioning, projecting, and speaking, and holding your hands in a certain way, they are witnessing, present tense, real time, this 2018, hundreds are going to lectures, hundreds of people are manifesting Cancer's disappearing, Lou Gehrig's disease disappearing, migraine headaches disappearing, bones healing, cars getting fixed, finances recuperating, sanity being restored. It's like, we should do that stuff. Then I spoke earlier a couple days ago about a book called The Outpouring of the Soul by Rabbi Nachman, who's deceased. He was a few years back. And he's saying, hey, he's speaking to the Jews. He says, it's not a portion to Israel to get into any of that stuff. What Israel was given is a direct communication, connection with Yahweh. And it's given to Israel to pray, to pour out your soul, because he hears and will directly intervene. It is not given to Israel to have to even regard totems, sacred objects, special words, types of feathers, jingling bells, or whatever it is you might find works. It's not given to Israel to consult the stars, conjure the ancient ancestors, dead spirits, necromancy, or even various other spirits that might be coming in the form of ascended masters or angel guides. Stuff that nowadays some might classify into the package of New Age or woo-woo or Eastern philosophical, religious, Indian mysticism. There's a book, I wouldn't recommend reading it, but just so you know, it's called Urantia. There's a bunch of other stuffs. I personally believe it's all about that. We won't even go into it to waste the airtime mentioning it, but I'm mentioning the word because this stuff is out there, and it works. Works meaning manifest healings, manifest sanity, but as Rabbi Nachman said, which is not a Christian perspective, he's a Jewish rabbi talking to Jews, he was encouraging people to pray. Every little detail at all times, even if you don't know how to pray, even if you feel awkward, oh, that's the time to do it. Just sit there and say, I feel awkward. I don't know what I'm saying. So ask for what to say. Ask for the sanity. Ask for the clarity. And if something hurts, it's okay to say, hey, I've got an owie to the Almighty. It's not some random God. It's the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. To specifically, intentionally direct to him who revealed himself in the Torah, not the New Testament, not the Pseudepigrapha or the other books that you might find in the book called Aleph Tav Sefer. It's a publication from Stephen Pidgeon et al. In Washington State. The point is, I'm not putting the book down, but I'm saying that Rabbi Nachman was talking about the message given to us in this book. Use that. The Elohim that references, he's the target, and to conduct your intent to him. Well, you focus this back to the book Healing Codes by Alex Lloyd. They don't push Christianity. They leave it as a footnote and as the last chapter saying this is what we believe. And they have the prayer that they found works that they're calling doing the Healing Code, is to say, I pray that such and such, which is to say, all wrong cell memory and things that are in the cellular level. Your brain isn't the depository of memory. It's both the heart and each cell, each organ. And so you're speaking a projection of, I pray that those things that were retained into the cells that were wrongfully cataloged or harmful, hurtful memories that you might call conscience, anything of that degrading, misaligning, misappropriating to where it goes on which shelves, be discovered and ameliorated and or resolved or ejected. And then you say the person's name, whether it's yourself or somebody else. You can do remotely third person. You can even do it for your dog or a lizard, as the stories were indicating success. And then you say, I pray that the light, life, and love of God be input into that vacuum, the void, upon the release of these other things, and then say, I release all these things to happen. So if you analyze that prayer, and it's done over 6 minutes, and you hold your hands like this, which is a focusing of energy, you hold it here, given a gap, like a spark plug gap, and you're, and then at your Adam's apple, the square of your jaw, and your temples. So I'm telling you, a friend asked me to evaluate the book, and this is what the book says, 250 pages or so, and it works. But let's analyze the prayer for a moment. I pray that, it's like, what, you're shooting a gun, shooting a shotgun, who are you going to hit? I'm suggesting, as what Nachman said, it's to the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yitzhak, the Elohim of Yaakov. It's the one who declared himself in this Torah in Exodus 3 as Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, Yahuwah Elohim Zavot. Focus direct is not what Andrew Lloyd or Alexander Lloyd is saying. I pray. Is that a request or a command? And you go to a court of law, they use that same terminology in America and in England. And the word pray literally is to petition the authority of the magistrate cloaked in black, because he is the captain of that ship of state. The flag with the gold tassels around it it's a ship on the high seas of commerce. He is the one who is king of his castle. He is God of his universe. And so when you pray, or an attorney prays to him, that's what he's doing. So now Alex Lloyd is saying that he found success using this protocol of praying to God. Now, not to get into the sacred name thing, as we were requested not to do, but some say the phonetic word spelled in Hebrew happens to be spelled Gimel Dalet, or in modern letters, Gimel Dalet is the English equivalent of GD. No vowel, so they put a blank there, but written right to left in Hebrew is where we get the word God, which came from German Gott, which is also where we get the word good. But all that, this happens to be the spelling, and there's a place in the Bible where it references this, the Canaanite deity whose jurisdiction was fortune and luck. Fortune and luck. There's another Canaanite deity in the same verse that's pronounced Meni, Mem Nun Yod, or money. This is M-N-Y, where we get our word money, which has to do with fortune and luck. Anyway, goodbye, the English word goodbye, just for what it's worth, is God be with ye, or you. God be with ye got scrunched down to simply goodbye. So all this stuff is just language. What I'm saying is that there are some people, especially if you look on the internet, especially them darn sacred namers, they say, this is not the Elohim of Yitzhak and Yaakov and Abraham and Moshe and David. This is some Canaanite deity picked up by the Norse, and then his character tweaked a bit. There's a word in the Hebrew that the Elohim, who refers to himself by these four letters, Yod He Vav He, which in the modern Hebrew is Yod He Wah He. That guy referred to these other guys. The English word be Baalim. Im is plural, and Baal is translated Lord. Various lords. And so the Canaanites would say, oh, we have the Lord, the Baal of the mountains, and the Lord of the valley, and the Lord of the sea, and the Lord of the harvest. Similar to the Greek and Romans, who would have Hercules and Poseidon and blah, 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 blah. And the Norse would do the same thing. And Yahweh says, I'm the guy who made heaven and earth. It's my possession. There ain't no lesser deities. Have no other Elohim connected to my face. The second commandment, Lo yi lacha Elohim achrim al panei. That's a whole other study we could get into, but the point is the fragmenting of creation to the jurisdiction under these various overlords is something that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh detests and told his people not to do it. But why do you think they did it? There's this passage in the scripture where it says the Israelites came against some certain Canaanites, I think it was of the mountains, and they were successful. The Israelites were successful, and the Canaanites go, rats, their God must be the God of the mountains. Tell you what, let's go down to the valley. That's where our God has preeminent superpower, and let's engage them there. So he came down there, and Yahweh says, when will these guys learn? I am the Elohim over all. You can't find a jurisdiction and say, gosh, our God is the God of the waters, so let's engage a naval battle instead of a land battle. That entire mentality is very similar to astrology. We talked the other day about separating the stars, the constellations, that Abraham was told to go out and analyze, to put pictures to read how we get the victory. Zadikah, the word for righteousness. So shall your offspring be. Or so shall be how the victory plays out. So the story of reading the constellations, known as the zodiac, because the word Zoe has to do with life, and so the life, which is the noon in the geometrical organization, which is the Psalmic, I'm pointing over there, the camera can't pick it up, it's this image here, the geometrical organization, engineered design of the Psalmic can be read as, where's those stars? Those are just dots. And the life, which is the consciousness, which is superimposed over it, noon over Psalmic, or Psalmic over noon, it's just a superimposing, is the spark of life, the consciousness, the intent of Yahuwah in putting them together. And I'm suggesting that the Noon Psalmic is also not only constellations, but it's also like matrix energetics, like the Psalmic is the matrix, and the energy, the spark of life, the consciousness is the noon. So you go quantum physics, the chemistry, the mathematics, the engagement of the energy and movement, which is the physics, and then the phantom variable, which Richard Bartlett identified as consciousness, is the noon. So there's various experiments, this book shows a lot of them, where, as we discussed yesterday, they'll take, as it were, a cannon or a rifle and shoot a certain single photon. And it hits a target in a certain array, but if you observe it, if you just look at it, it changes. How is that possible? A photon being directed can only move if there's a force applied to it to distract it. Even if the force is gravity, electromagnetism, but there isn't anything, you're just looking at it. Well, as if your eyes were not just receivers, but also
transmitters.
Transmitters, I was going to say trajectors. But so then they said, well, we'll override that. Conducting scientific experiments where you run with different factors and alter them. They put a camera. But even the camera observing changed it. And then there's other experiments where one of them that was mentioned, two people walk up and say, oh, hello, we don't know each other. They meet for a moment, and then they separate. And they shine a light in one of them's eyes, and the other one's pupils constrict. Why? How did that happen? And there's a whole bunch of experiments. If you just look up quantum physics, you might find all kinds of just mind-blowing, wonderful, amazing, astounding, must be witchcraft, must be them demons. Yahweh invented and organized the world in ways that are affected by consciousness, and no one has ever figured this out yet, so they're calling this new physics. And they're calling this, both these books are saying, the guy's back with Aristotle and Plato and Pythagoras and Newton and Einstein. They were all looking for this, and here it is. Present tense. It's at our doorstep, which is why I'm bringing it up. 2018, because this is the it manifesting healing, sanity, resolution, peace. For all these centuries that people were looking for, and here it is. And all you have to do is hold your hands and say these words. Hold your hands like this, 2-point. Hold your hands like this, healing codes. And they're finding results. Enough so that I would say, go over to John and say, blah, blah, whatever, and bam, I want to see that happen. But that was not a portion to Israel. To Israel, it was a portion to, and both these guys to say it's focused intent. And both these books say stress is the primary killer. it degrades cells, it conducts erosion of DNA, and it's fed by fear. And if you can resolve the fear and resolve the stress, it facilitates the natural immune system to recover the DNA. And then Dr. Emoto's work, which is Messages in Water, says that if you speak certain words, but even if you don't speak the words, if you write the words on a piece of tape and stick it on a glass of water, the crystalline structure of the water molecules changes. Instead of looking like lava, discolored, it'll look like a pure crystal snowflake, brilliant and sparkling, just for the sake of writing a word. And it doesn't even matter which language, because it was the intent of the author to put it. And even if you stick a picture of a monastery, it heals, purifies the water. It's like, monastery? By golly, them are Buddhists. Why not a Christian church or a cathedral? Maybe the Vatican. Maybe put it on that and see what happens. Also, if you play music. And then they took some dadgum heathens to project prayers, and it had a positive effect. They're not even believers. What are they doing? Why is it that prayers of non-Christians help? And there was other experiments that they've done, the double-blind study where in hospitals, where they have patients who are prayed for, comparing them to patients who are not prayed for by people not even in the hospital, and the ones who are prayed for manifest healing faster and more thoroughly than to the contrary. All this gets into the realm of quantum physics, which is what we're talking about. If you look at Frank Seekin's study, Hebrew Word Pictures, he basically, when I say basically, it's just a fundamental level. If you look at this chart, there's approximately 40 different values to the meaning of each letter. This chart could have been easily 3 times bigger. 120 values to each letter. And maybe it doesn't even end there. I'm just saying what I've discovered, what I've found, what I've noticed. Even in my own mind, I've noticed. Doesn't mean it's real. You'll have to figure that out for yourself. The point is, he says, this is teeth, so it means to destroy. It's teeth or fire, the letter Sheen. Lamed is a shepherd's staff. It's the number 12, and it speaks of authority, like the shepherd who holds the staff. Vav is a nail. So what does a nail do? It builds something. So when you build something, you're establishing something. So he plugs in the word establish. And Mem is water, but water is unstable. Water, even if it's in a bowl, if there's the slightest earthquake or somebody bumps it, it registers. So water is chaotic. So he says, okay, well, Mem is chaos. So not Stephen Collins, Frank Seekins says the way you read shalom and what the essence of shalom is destroy the authority that establishes chaos. Whew, great insight. Kick out the devil and you've got peace. Peace is the absence of demonic activity. Is that true? What do you think? Is that true? Okay, sure. Let's say it's true. Does that cover the entire base of the whole subject? I don't even think it comes close. It's there, but it's not even close to any of these things that we're talking about. But is that then real peace? So if I say that the answer to everything, including the human mind and the way the mind fits together, which would put to the realm of psychology, so I could just say, here's the Greek letter psi, and if you write that, that's basically psychology, right? It's the study of how the mind works. Philosophy uses the Greek letter phi, and so you could say that's philo is love, and Sophie is the word for wisdom. So just in the realm of philosophy, the love of wisdom, and psychology, how the brain works, you put those two together, and you have this whole study of this noon side, energy and thought, and then you have the hard sciences, you might say, is math and chemistry, and then the way things really function together in motion, which could be physics. So I could say, well, I would call these the hard sciences. And somebody, I was talking to a physicist, and he said, physics is not a hard science. Talk about guessing and making stuff up. That's the whole thing. And then other people have said, well, the same thing could be said of math. Math isn't even solid, but it all depends on the perspective, the subjective understanding of who the guy is you're talking to. So when it comes into the meaning of the letters, Talk to Michael Heiser. Listen to Dr. Brown. According to their understanding of what they learned and what they teach, all this stuff is crapola. Just so you know, it's just a bunch. You might as well fertilize your lawn. In fact, it's not even worth that. Just trash it. Just so you know. They're the authoritative voices, and that's what they say about this. But the whole point of this is for me to say, if you want to know what peace is, let's look at the word of the spelling of the word shalom and see what's in there. Michael Brown, very emphatically, he was almost spitting into the camera, insisting that nobody ever in the history of the world has ever done this. You can't read the letters and see pictures in the letters and determine what the word means. You can't. It's wrong. It doesn't work. It's invalid. Thank you, Michael Brown. As I said, the M&M boys of Michael Heiser and Michael Brown have both determined that this is innovative and not copying or plagiarizing anybody. They're the go-to guys that said that they've scoured the resources of antiquity and brought it all together and said this has never been established and ever done before. Thank you. I couldn't have hired a better crew of guys to go out and search, and it just doesn't exist. So thank you, Yahweh. This is His timing for His revelation. The point is, about 25 years ago, Stephen Collins, Christian, marriage counselor, somehow was at a Bible study or something, bumped into this Hebrew concept that the word bet, modern Hebrew, bet is house and noon is life. So the word B-N, which is where we get the word Ben, which is the word that means son, like an offspring, can be read as the house with life. The life of the house is to have a child, a son. That's the life of the house. His mind went going, and that's why he came up with analyzing other words, the book Hebrew Word Pictures, which is a wonderful book at a certain level. And then he was looking at the Paleo letters, Bet Nun, and he analyzed the orthography and goes on and showing how the letter shapes have morphed through various languages over various centuries. It's a great book. The original book was like written for grade school kids, almost looked like a coloring book, but the many, half a dozen various publication editions since then, and now looks almost like a college textbook, so if you get to one of the later ones, it's almost intimidating.
We have one in the car if anybody wants to look at
You
it.
said Stephen Collins.
No, that's Frank Seekins.
Yeah.
Stephen Collins, I put his name here, I'll reference that in a minute. But here, let's just analyze this for a minute to take the theory into a practical moment. If I say Sheen is the monogram of El Shaddai, suddenly I'm going to think differently than if I just say destroy. When Sally sees Sheen, she sees fire, the refiner's fire, pure and clean, absolutely kadosh, as if it came from the throne of El Shaddai, before any human engagement of mental activity was to wrap its mind around the projection of those words. What comes right out of the throne in its purest state, as it were the teeth. The word shana, or lashon, is also translated language, lip, language, tongue. And the picture in Hebrew is that you've got these teeth biting it, variance. So the word for shane is also variation, difference. It's the color red, which is blaring. It's like your stop sign, or the guy hits the brakes. It's like pay attention, something aggressively is contrasting you. It's also the same word for damage done by teeth. So when people say lashon hara, the word ra, reshayan, evil. Hara, the evil. Lashon, tongue. But it's the language of evil or difference or variance. So it doesn't, that's lashon hara, but lashon doesn't necessarily mean it's evil. It's just variations, variegations. But the word for shafah, shin pei hey in Hebrew, shin pei hey, this word pei is a picture of a mouth. It's something that opens. Hey is to express or put on evidentiary display. It also is the word that simply means here. You could have spelled it pei aleph, and it also means here. Sheen as a suffix letter, a prefix letter means that which is in the condition of or belongs to, similar to the letter bet. Sheen isn't always identified as a prefix letter, but this whole word means lip, language, tongue, to be smooth and clear like the lip. It's not got other stuff on it, like the highway is smooth, so you could say, well, that's like a lip. A highway being a lip? A highway is maintained so there's no gravel and stuff that'll hit your windshield. It's kept clear and clean. The top of a mountain which is windswept, the edge of a riverbank or of a lake which is clear of foliage, all those are pictures of this word. And it also means to restore to health, like someone who's recovered from some illness, and it also means to cure of lunacy. So where I go with this is to say, oh, here is El Shaddai's language, lip, which cures from lunacy and restores to health by destroying variant, opposing concepts, words, religions, idols, traditions. If you get back to the Kadosh, right out of what's emanating from his throne. So the song that we heard Paul Wilbur singing, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Those are the words that the angels around the throne of El Shaddai, of El Elyon, of Ehi Asher Ehyeh, of Yahweh Zavot. These angels can say nothing more than Kadosh. So the word Kadosh must mean what Sally was picturing, trying to find the English words to appropriate to it, emanating pure from the throne without any encumbrance, without any entanglement, without any sticks along the riverbank. Just, that's she. Right out of El Shaddai. Now, the word Shaddai, Shad, literally is the feminine breast, which means the provider of all benefits, the one who nourishes and sustains every single cellular bodily need that the offspring could possibly want from a microcellular level, giving the electrons down to the very cells and everything up to, wow, that tastes good and smells good, like a wonderful meal. And it also means the overwhelming destroyer. Picture the guns of Navarone, an old World War II movie, where the Germans had these tremendous cannons that could obliterate any ship within 50 miles or something. And the overwhelming, devastating force. Shad also means evil demon. What? Evil demon? That's the way the Hebrew works. It's also a chest of drawers. A chest of drawers, you could say that refrigerator. Open it up and inside it's stacked full of, like a chest of drawers, anything you could want if you're hungry. Those are the connotations of those words, right? The point is, that's El Shaddai. So if I'm reading the word shalom, the first order of business is to picture the one whose attention I'm focused on. And all that he is, as described in that letter. Now the letter Lamed is a shepherd's staff, but it's also shaped like a tongue or a rudder. The word in Hebrew, which is spelled He Gimel He, Hagah, literally is a tongue or a rudder. James, the book of James, talks about that the tongue steers the entire being, the body, by words, just like a little tiny rudder steers a big giant ship. And it looks just like a lamed drawn in this aspect, which is why I draw it like that. Other people might draw it like this or like that. I draw it to look like a rudder, on purpose. Like a tongue, on purpose. Like also a nose. The word for wrath or anger is aleph pei, which is the word for nose. Why should the word for nose, N-O-S-E, be the word for anger? Because if you... I had a friend, hey Dieter, used to practice flaring his nostrils because he was the thug that was with somebody to go as the enforcer. They'd knock on a door and his job was to sit there and flare his nostrils and intimidate the other guy that had to cough up some bucks. The point is, Yahweh's doing the same thing. And so the word for anger is nose because aleph is strong and pei is mouth. Strong mouth? How is that nose? How is that anger? This is how the Hebrew mind works. pictures and concepts wrapped around the subject. So as the nose goes, so goes the face, so goes the head, so goes, that's why they put the nose ring in a bowl. So the nose ring in the bowl directs it, Peiresh is the word for bowl, par. I'm just saying, once you get on something, you can run with it and track with it, and this is the Sephrim, which I think is a wonderful game. It's wonderful. It's the sport of the heavens, like I keep saying. So the point is, this authority, well, Lamed literally means, the word Lamed means teach and learn and repeat. How do you learn to play the violin? You play the scales again and again and again and again, because what's happening is that there's neural synapses in the brain. And as you do something repetitiously, those synapses start firing, and if it's the same thing over and over, they blaze a trail, a smooth place in the brain where they just do it automatically, so it becomes rote. So, Karate Kid, wax on, sand the fence, does it so many times that when a guy comes up, he goes, "Huh!" He goes, "Yeah!" He goes through the moves. You don't even have to think about it. It's just conditioned. Yahweh made the brain that way. There was a lady that gave a TED Talk, and she says, you will be a completely different person, physiologically, at a cellular level, after you leave this lecture, 20-minute lecture. What's she talking about? Because the things you hear changes at a molecular level, changes at a conscious, sentient level, and when you step out, your DNA, however they do that science, has been altered. You are a different physical being here than 20 minutes earlier for the sake of hearing this lecture. That's stuff at this quantum physics level. I'm just trying to almost hint at these things that you could go research on your own. It's mind-blowing, fascinating stuff, but I'm trying to supply things that I've never heard anybody else talk about, just to bring the Hebrew alphabet, the consciousness of Yahweh's instructions of His Torah. Teach and learn not just anything, like the lady giving the TED Talk, it's Yahweh's instructions of His Torah. The value of the letter Lamed is that it follows the Kaf. The Kaf is an open hand. Where's the Torah? The Kaf is drawn that way because it's lines. There's stripes on this chair. That's Kaf imagery. Palm branch, Kaf imagery. The horizontal or the vertical lines on that sukkah, Kaf imagery. They're Kaf pictures. If I opened up a text, going, wow, look at the zebra stripes. That's Kaf imagery. So I can look at this even at just one level and say, oh, Kaf must be the lines of instruction that you, Lamed, teach and learn. But Kaf imagery is also furrows in a field. And what do? You plant the seed. Well, Yeshua gave parables of the sower and the seed, and he said the seed is the word of Elohim. You plant what field? In your heart. You open your heart, which is the mem, which is the womb, which is the next letter after Lamed, and you open your heart and you plant the seed, which is to be inseminated by Yahweh. And as we talked yesterday, the word for oil, shin mem nun, gee, that's the oil, but it's also the English word, semen, which carries the DNA of the father, the donor. So the oil that the 5 virgins didn't have is the DNA of Abba Yah. And he closed the door and said, I don't know you. That's one little thing that we didn't mention yesterday, but that was part of the whole thing. How do you get that? It's the genetic structure carrying the spark of life, which is the consciousness of our Father. That's the DNA. The scientists that I've read about, anyway, they know what DNA looks like, the spiral helix, or maybe it's a triple, maybe not just 2, that's a whole other thing. But somehow in the organization of those 4 factors, it determines what you look like and how you think and where you came from, and it carries memory from previous generations into the modern generation. So when Yahuwah in Exodus 3 says that Yahweh is his Shem Zakar, there's the English words. it's translated, this is Shin Mem. Well, there's the word Shem, as in Shemen, Shem. And Mem Nun means where? From what? What is this? So that's the word literally oil, where we get the word Shemini, which is the number 8. So according to your calendar, today is Shemini Atzeret. Hi Karen, it's her calendar today, Shemini Atzeret. Other people have it tomorrow, that's a different matter. I'm just saying, Shemini Atzeret of 2018. This is what we're talking about. So Shem means name, but it's also fame, renown, reputation. It's your DNA. Your DNA is your Shem. And what we've been talking about is that the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet is Yahweh's DNA. It's his fame, it's his renown, its reputation, and it's keyed to, correlated to, the 7 Moedim, which is the witnesses and testifiers. Testifiers. That is the Torah, the Ruach, which house his identity, his DNA. So you have the features of the male anatomy, which is the Vav connector, which is Yeshua, and you've got these Heys on this side and the Hey on that side, testifying of his identity, which is that of the Father, the Yod, the number 10. Gee, you're supposed to, when you circumcise, you tithe your Yod of the Vav, so the modern Hebrew Vav shaped like this. Well, this happens to be the shape of the Yod, which is the number 10, or 1/10. So to tithe the Yod of the Vav is to be circumcised. That's another picture. It's in the male anatomy. So Hey Vav Hey is a picture of the masculine. And when he says his name, Shem Zakar, is Yod Hey Vav Hey, the word Zakar, which is written Zayin Kaf Resh, doesn't just mean memorial and ceremonial or remember, it means masculine. And it also is a pointed tool, like a knife, which you insert, or a shovel that you use to pierce open the earth and plant the seed. So when you open your heart and have the planted seed of his identity, his DNA, the Hebrew alphabet, put inside you, there's the model of asking Yeshua into your heart. The phrase, ask Jesus in your heart, doesn't exist anywhere in the Bible, but he does say, I stand at the book of Revelation, I stand at the door and knock, if any man will open up and receive me, invite me in. He doesn't say I'll come in and impregnate him, he says, I will sup with him. What is sup? You can sit there and continue to analyze all these words, and your mind will reel with subjective imaginations, just like this. But is it real? The subjective imaginations are the noon, but the organized structure of he who arranged and put all this together is the samic, and the combination of the two is where the spark of life, because they see DNA, but they don't know what makes it live. They see the cell, but how did it get there? They see the organized structure of the cell, but it's alive and it functions. So various people, like Ken Hovind says, look, you can't evolve a functioning working cell. To think that evolution happened with a cell with all these things, with a motor and an oven and a combustion chamber, it's like, imagine taking a junkyard and throwing it up in the air, and suddenly you have a 747 fully functional in flight with passengers who are thinking and the control panel's working. It's like, well, that's what the evolutionists claimed that this world just became. It just didn't happen. And if you think that happened, see you later. We have nothing to discuss. 3:01. Oh, okay. Time. We're regulated by time. So the instructions of the Torah, purely kadosh from the throne of El Shaddai. Vav? What's Vav? Oh, if I appropriate Vav to be Yeshua, born witness by the Torah and the testimony that he is the one sent from Elohim, Vav is also the number 6. Book of Revelation says something about 666, the number of man, but is it 666 or is it 666? Which then is a whole different thing. You spell it in Greek letters, you spell it in Hebrew letters, whole other count of words, just saying so you know. What is this Vav? Well, Vav is a nail. A nail? What is a nail? So some people see in Yod Vav Hey, as Brad was saying, it made an impression on him. Yod is a working hand. A hand. Hey means, look, behold, see, put some light on it. Would you notice the hand, please? If Vav is a nail, it's like nail. Notice the nail. Notice the nail in the hand. What hand? What nail? Oh, that's right. Thank you, Romans. And rabbis, you put the nail in the hand of this man who lived 2,000 years ago, and so perhaps Yod He Vav He means, yeah, that guy. The guy with the nail in his hand. You know who we're talking about. Don't pretend you don't. You know who we're talking about, the guy with the nail in his hand, in reference to Yod He Vav He.